This is Martin Kobla Fianu, and this presentation is aimed at finding an answer to the question of whether Castro the Hiplife Star and his companion, Miss Janet Bandu, could be alive as Mami Wacha's captives or should be considered dead. On 16th July 2014, the renowned Ghanaian Hiplife Star, Mr. Theophilus Tego, popularly known as Castro the Destroyer, and his girlfriend Janet Bandu were reported to have disappeared at the Adan estuary whilst jet skiing. The police tried hard to get clues to enable them arrive at a definitive conclusion as to whether the two pals are alive or dead. But try as they did, they were unsuccessful in unraveling the disappearance mystery. Nonetheless, in line with statutory principles, the police are officially likely to declare Castro and his girlfriend dead by the end of July 2021, which would mark the end of the 7th year after the disappearance of the two friends. But because Ghanaians are notoriously religious, that is to borrow the words of Professor John S. Mbiti, several prophets and spiritualists belonging to the three major religions in this country, namely Christianity, Islam, and traditional religion, showed up and claimed they could use their spiritual powers to locate Castro and his friend and bring them back alive from wherever they are. But they too have gone mute, except one or two who occasionally whip up sentiments on social media with fake news that Castro is hiding in Australia and would return very soon. At the moment, the confusion raging on among the friends, fans, and family members of Castro and his girlfriend, which has to be resolved unequivocally, is whether they should accept the views of the police when they finally close the docket and declare Castro and his pal dead, or should maintain their faith in the prophets and spiritualists who are emphatic that Castro and Janet are alive in Mami Wacha's abode, so can be rescued when the appropriate expensive rituals and sacrifices are performed. However, a scientific approach can be used to resolve this dilemma by examining the factors that prevail at the area where the disappearance occurred and use these to arrive at definitive conclusion as to whether one has to finally accept the verdict of the police when declared, or continue to bank hopes on the assurances given by the men of God and the spiritualists. The topography of the Volta estuary. The Adan environs is a breathtaking, scenic, riverine, and oceanic enclave with several inhabited islands created by the deposition of mud and silt by the Volta River in very ancient times to form a delta that stretches all the way from Afienya and Dawenya in the west to Jojena Plao in the east and stretches up northward to Peve. This is from Ado, Nichols, Kujo, and Abu 2018. Hence, with regard to the water body system, the Adan Tourism and Holiday Resort area can be divided into two zones, namely a long and wide freshwater stretch comprising the Volta River Channel with its beautiful islands, and then the ocean itself, which has a sandy beach coastline being ravaged by strong coastal erosion. The freshwater area is very calm, and the flow of the Volta is hardly noticeable because the Akosombo Dam and Pong dams built across the Volta River have drastically reduced the strength of the current of the river. European seafarers and oceanographers and geographers call the area where the Volta River discharges her waters into the Atlantic Ocean the Gulf of Guinea. And being an estuarine shoreline, it is a highly dynamic and turbulent area because of the strong wave forces generated by the ocean opposing the flow of the Volta River. At this junction, the river is pushing fresh water out to sea, whilst tidal currents transport seawater up the river channel. And as noticed by oceanographers and water research scientists, because seawater is denser than fresh water, when two such water bodies meet at estuarine areas, the fresh water forms a distinct column above the seawater, and a sharp boundary is created between the two water masses, with fresh water floating and flowing on top, and a wedge of salt water at the bottom. The boundary between the two water masses, that is the location of the freshwater wedge, of the underwater wedge, varies with the weather and tidal conditions, and is a zone of great turbulence, which poses great risk to swimmers, surfers, and fishermen. Whilst the mouth of the Volta has its specific local turbulent conditions, the Gulf of Guinea also has its oceanic current called the Guinea Current, which flows eastwards towards Nigeria with local maximum speeds of 2 to 3 knots, that is 1 to 1.5 meters per second, as reported by ROES 2018, who referenced studies conducted by Wiafe et al. 2013 and Houghton 1976. ROES further states that at depths of around 40 to 60 meters, there is a counter current which flows in westerly directions and combines with tidal forces to generate swell waves that on the average are 1 meter high but have annual maxima of around 2.5 to 3 meters, with the highest waves occurring from July to August, whilst the lowest waves occur around January and February. It is thus important to note that Castro and Janet were out at the ocean front line in July, which is the season of maximum wave generation. How the accident could have occurred. Now, with the oceanographic conditions described above in mind, let us reconstruct what happened on that fateful day. The two happy friends mounted their jet skiing machine with Castro in front in control and wearing a life jacket, and Janet sitting behind him, holding him tightly around his middle, and they take off from the calm, fresh water section and then cruise at jet skiing speed, which, as estimated by Jackson 2017, could have been at an average velocity of 105 kilometers per hour. That is 65 miles per hour towards the open sea. Then at the point where the Volta meets the Atlantic Ocean, because it is the season of big strong waves, they would encounter 2.5 to 3 meter high waves that would have lifted or flipped the jet ski temporarily into the sky, at least 3 meters above the water surface. And gravity would bring them back the next moment, hitting the surface of the ocean with a heavy smack, and then they would be tossed up again by another wave. A couple of such smacks and in rapid succession would throw the lady up as she is not the one gripping the handles of the jet ski, and she will yank Castro off, and both will plunge into the turbulent Volta River Gulf of Guinea choppy zone, with Janet clutching Castro tightly, and he would be incapable of extricating himself from the frantic double-arm grip of the drowning lady. And as their combined weight would be greater than the floating capacity of the single life jacket, they would be dragged down into the underwater salt wedge counter Guinea current and be swept out to sea at the speed of not less than 1 meter per second. Thus, after every minute, they would be carried 60 meters away by the underwater current in random directions. So by the time the jet ski, which being very buoyant and watertight, was found floating without its passengers, and the police informed to begin their search and rescue mission, would Castro and his friend, clutching one another, not be dead and more than 1 kilometer deep down inside the Atlantic Ocean, and be several kilometers farther away from the shore? The idea of the sea rejecting corpses. Some people think the sea god dislikes dead bodies and so rejects them. Thus, it was expected that the corpses of Castro and Janet would be found floating and being blown towards the shore somewhere, especially after the third day, when the decomposing bodies would be bloated. But it is not in all cases that drowned people are washed ashore. In instances where the drowning people are caught in strong underwater eddies, their corpses are dragged deeper towards the bottom of the ocean and thus do not float. Conclusion. Taking into consideration the peculiar oceanographic conditions that prevail at the Adan Volta estuary, and the fact that Castro the Destroyer and Janet skied to the estuarine boundary, one can conclude without equivocation that the Hiplife Star and his companion are dead, and their remains are at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Thus, though very painful and extremely sorrowful, family members, friends, and fans of Mr. Theophilus Tego and his companion should brace themselves for the bad news and accept the ultimate declaration of the police next year and make the funeral arrangements for their disappeared son and daughter. My condolences to the bereaved families. Suggestion. The Dangbe East local government authorities, in conjunction with the tourism and marine safety officials, should use part of the taxes taken from the holiday resort operators to procure and mount anchored floating markers at the danger zone to warn jet skiers, canoe sightseers, and swimmers. And the local resort operators in the Adan area should also ensure that they warn their clients to avoid the estuarine front line, where the Volta and the Atlantic Ocean meet. And also, they should advise their clients not to drink until they have finished jet skiing, or not to ski at all when tipsy, so as to avoid a repeat of this preventable accident, which some people erroneously attribute to Mami Water. Thank you.